In today's episode, we're going to be talking with Ty Ferraro from Control Solutions Inc. in Houston, Texas. Ty is going to be talking to us a little bit about some best practices, some strategies around how to deal with the distributor model. It's not as easy as when you're obviously selling directly to an end user. So what are some best practices on how to do that and some value-added resources? So you don't want to miss this episode, and it's going to be awesome. I'm Danny Gonzalez, and this is IndustrialSage. All right, so Ty, thanks so much for joining us today for this IndustrialSage episode. But before we get started, I was hoping you could introduce yourself and Control Solutions Inc. to our audience.
Absolutely. Thanks, Danny, and thanks for having me. Control Solutions is a specialty chemical company that sells into three key markets. So the pest management, structural pest management market, where our end-use customers are those of Terminix and Orkin. Mm-hmm. And then we serve into the golf course and turf and ornamental market, so down into golf courses through distribution, and also landscaping companies like John Deere and SiteOne. And finally into the animal health market, so a lot of insecticides and other type of products that help with either fleas and ticks or mosquitoes, or just keeping either production animals or consumer pets healthy and happy.
Great. And Ty, so what's your background? What's your marketing background here?
Yeah. So I am joined this company about a year ago. Prior to this, I worked for Dow AgroSciences in a marketing role, several marketing roles. And I actually went to school at Indiana University for marketing, went out of school, worked in Chicago for a company called Cintas, so another B2B company. Mm-hmm. And then I went back to get my MBA, and afterwards kind of joined this specialty chemical market through Dow Chemical and Dow AgroSciences. Work a lot of B2B experience and a lot really working through distribution and trying to extend the reach and frequency of sales forces through distribution into large end-use markets.
Excellent. And that's going to be the topic of today. What we're going to go over is really some strategies and best practices on really how to really market that way when you're dealing with 90 plus or 100% through distribution, because it's, we talk about digital marketing, and it is, everyone loves it. It's exciting because you can track and you can measure and all. But when you have a 100% distribution model, that gets a little bit more difficult. So, yeah. So let's talk. Jumping right into this. Let's set the stage. What are some of the current challenges in terms of that model?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's really always between kind of finding a balance between the push and the pull marketing, right? So really trying to figure out how much to incentivize and to motivate distribution to really talk and push your product versus how much, how it can get very expensive to do a large pull campaign. But with product launches, you need to generate some demand and some awareness and curiosity and familiarity with products. So the formula is a little bit different in B2B, and it's definitely different when you're working through distribution. In the markets that we're currently in, really there's some big distribution players who have a little bit more channel power than the smaller specialty chemical company that I work at today. So in that instance, you really need to be very focused on relationships and making sure that no matter what tactic you're going to deploy, that they are in the loop and that they're being communicated with. And really, the more you can get them to buy in and engage, the more successful or the more likely you're going to be successful with any given tactic.
Absolutely. So it's really, really a lot around those relationships and the like there. But another big challenge that I see is that it's almost like you have your sort of persona development, looking at who those distributors are selling to. But it's almost like there's another layer there. So you've got with the push pull there. I mean, you're targeting, you've got end users, but then you've also got to look at those distributors as another target, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. So really defining the customer is a more challenging question than it is in other companies and other industries. Really, we try to think of the customer as your distributor, the person that is actually purchasing products from us, but the consumer is also an important person, and that's really the end user. So in some cases, that's a homeowner applying a flea pesticide, a flea product on their dog or cat. Right. And in others, a pest management professional spraying around your house or your schools or hospitals with product. You got to think about the persona of either of both, and really try to make sure you've got a value proposition that's distinct and strong for both of those end users or both of those kind of customer or consumer groups.
Yeah, and I can imagine, there's definitely unique challenges there where you've got that, and you have a few brands, you've got a few different spaces you guys are in. So kind of, having that there, obviously managing the budget, all that good stuff, definitely can be a little bit of a, a little bit of a challenge because, everyone always says, oh, we don't have enough budget. That's always a challenge for every marketer out there. I don't care who you are. You never have enough budget. And if you don't, then, come talk to me then, but, right. So how are you guys manage that in terms of, as far as some strategies and some tactics on, really managing that sort of that push pull and maybe some best practices around that?
Yeah. So we have what we call really one of the biggest tactics that we have and one of the biggest responsibilities as a marketing group is similar to other companies is launching products, right? So we've been launching probably too many products every year, but we still have the responsibility to make sure that we're launching successfully. So with that, there's always the demand to make end users aware of the products, and all the several tactics that you can deploy for that, as well as incentivizing and putting in the right structure and motivation and making sure that distribution is comfortable with the products you have. So you've got to figure out how to kind of position it with distribution so that they feel comfortable selling it, and you have to position it with end users so they feel comfortable using your product. In our instance, we are outnumbered in each of the three markets really that we serve, 3 or 4 to 1 in terms of sales reps. So feet on the street. So marketing, while we only really have a very small department as well, it's our job to really try to make sure that the messages and the positioning that our sales force is aligned on are resonating much further out than they can actually touch and feel. So whether that's YouTube or social media or digital ads, we're doing a lot of work around online trainings as well to make sure that that not only distribution but also end users feel comfortable and confident with our products.
Yeah, that's great, and I'm glad you brought up that training piece. I mean, that I feel like that is such a critical element to be able to do that because if you really look at it, when you break it down, there's going to be different pain points between the end user and the distributor, and I think obviously, I feel like that's a really great solution to be able to solve sort of both of those areas. So the training, for the end user, obviously, but also training for the distributor so that, look, these distributors are repping, there's tons of products. And so that's a challenge just to kind of stay in front of them and say, hey, like, here's ours. So I think that using that kind of as a way to be able to educate them on the product, how to use it, making it easier for them, right? And then, further, help to make that sale.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In our department, really the mission and the vision for marketing at CSI is really twofold, right? So we want to extend the reach and frequency of our sales force. And the online training, as well as all the online digital marketing tactics we do, they really do reach that goal pretty simply just because, again, in any given business, any of those three, we have about 7 sales reps to cover the entire country. They physically can't do it, right? So we're working hard to kind of extend their reach and frequency. And then also the really foremost vision of our department and for the company is to change our perception in the industry, really from that of again more of a generic Me Too type player to a differentiated proprietary partner, right? And to the customers and the consumers that we serve. So that's a journey that's going to take, but doing something, being not just competent, but having a core capacity in marketing and digital marketing sets us apart, at least from a lot of competition and definitely from other generic or Me Too companies. It puts us back on pace with the Dows, the Syngentas, the BSFs, the Bears, the big players in that market, in our markets. And then furthermore, kind of making sure that we're doing things differently. So no other company in our industry that's our size is even thinking about spending the kind of investment in time and energy and money to do an online tactic of any sort, let alone a training, which is very difficult to tie directly back to sales.
And so that was, I was going to ask that next question. It's just in terms of that measurement. What does that look like? So obviously, if it's difficult, it's very difficult to be able to tie that back. But are there other KPIs or other things that you're looking at that might be indicators of what the sales might be looking like?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So my organization, grew up in sales, right? Like a lot of companies were, just a couple. We're a smaller market cap, privately owned. For the most part, and what we're working towards is really headcount and the number of people that take that training, qualifying it. That, for example, on the golf side, we're only having one superintendent per golf course take that. Now there's almost 20,000 golf courses, so if we get a 10% pickup on superintendents, we feel like that means that a couple thousand superintendents sat and spent time learning about our products. And maybe they had heard about it, maybe they hadn't, but now they are undoubtedly going to be more comfortable and confident with our messages than they were before. Now, as far as measuring it to sales, what we like to do is we like to partner with regional distribution. So again, when I talked about partnering, you have to make sure that they're comfortable with it and that they're on board. The more you can get them on board, the more successful you're going to be, because that just enhances your feet on the street. Distribution has hundreds of sales reps, if not thousands. So now if you get them kind of talking about, or at least aware of what you're doing, you kind of get them in your corner. What we're going to try to do is send the lists of people that took the training to regional distributors, so there's less channel conflict. So their territories aren't overlapping as much. And we'll try to give them warm leads, and we'll be able to kind of measure and track how many of these quote unquote warm leads, we're able to be closed based on, the training being completed by that superintendent, and therefore that superintendent being more familiar with our products.
That's great. That's fantastic. I think it's a really great example of creating some really value-added resources there, because I'd imagine as a distributor, it's like, look, you're sending me leads, through this training and stuff. It's like, oh, okay, well, great. Of course, we're going to go, follow up on this right away. So,
yeah.
So, and as far as also, it sounds like when you were talking about the looking at the different superintendents and the percentages, and you can kind of make an inference. You can kind of look at it and say, okay, this is kind of what we're feeling here. So, I mean, that makes sense. At least it's not like we're going to put we feel like the wind is, coming from over here. There are some hard metrics that you can do, to be able to use that.
Yeah. So here was the equation was pretty simple. How worst case, most likely case, best case, how many bodies, how many superintendents in this case are we going to get to take the training, to sit through a half an hour of training? Now, remember, we're incentivizing this training, so they're getting a gift card or a shopping experience of some sort, keep it there, for 30 minutes of training.
Yeah.
It's about a $50 value for 30 minutes of time. So even the most well-paid superintendents, I mean, even you and I would sit down and take a training for 30 minutes for $50, right? So,
sure.
So we kind of measured out, okay, here's the total market, 20,000 golf courses. If we have 5%, that's kind of low, but we're still spending six figures on this overall, on this tactic. If we get 10%, say in my history, that'd be pretty good.
Yeah.
What does that look like as far as your exposure? And then, man, if this thing really takes off and everybody really loves it, then what are we looking at? Okay, so that's your exposure and the number of people that have taken it. And then it's really a matter of what are you willing to pay for a person to sit down and take your training. And what it came down to in our discussions was, I would, my CEO and executive vice president said I'd happily pay X amount of dollars, to if I can know that they sat and took a training.
Oh yeah.
About our products, took quizzes and passed the quizzes, especially when this isn't new money for this tactic, but it is money that we are going to be able to track and kind of gauge success a lot better than a lot of the more traditional marketing tactics that are out there. We spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, for example, on print media. Mm-hmm. We have very little to no understanding or understanding of what success is or what traction we're getting from those tactics, right? There's still value for them, but this is something where at least we're going to be able to say, concretely what we got for what we spent.
Absolutely, and I love the fact, so it is an online training, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, so great benefits there because like you mentioned before, you only have so many salespeople. So even if you did like a lunch and learn and that kind of thing, I mean, that takes a lot of time, takes a lot of money. This thing you can recycle. You can kind of rinse, repeat. It's there and it's evergreen, and you update it as needed and all that good stuff. But and the other thing that I really like about it is that it's value driven. I know there's an incentive piece to it, but it's training. It's not come to our sales seminar. We're going to tell you how we're the most amazing thing, and it's great. It's just, we know you guys have a challenge. We're going to help you. We're going to help you solve that, and we're going to give you some training. And I think that's absolutely just a great approach on how to do that.
We're really excited about it, and there is additional value we get from it. But you're right. All these training modules will then go up on our website and be available even without being incentivized. But you're right. So we're gonna then also be capturing all of our end user consumers information, right?
Yes.
We'll know a lot more about our end users, and so we can either contact them down the road, or we can continue the conversation, and we plan to.
Yes.
Script campaigns and really continuing the education. Not coming in with a hard sell, because in a sense, they're not our customer, right? They're
right.
our customer, and we want to kind of make sure to toe that line between getting close to them and maybe having the opportunity to do focus groups, make sure we're understanding unmet needs and so on. But at the same time, make sure that we manage the channel, and we manage channel conflict by allowing, going in there with distribution and working together and partnering. So this gives us a lot of data that we don't have currently, or as dispersed across the company. This brings it really to one central place and allows us to start that conversation with the end user.
I'm glad you brought up that point on data, because it's not a one and done kind of thing here. It's just, this is a lead gen tool. This is a magnet to be able to attract people. You're able to build your awareness that way. Like, to your point, even people who maybe necessarily didn't go through the whole thing, or they didn't buy, but they're going to know about control solutions, and then you're able to build a database, and you're able to continue to foster those relationships and be able to go from there, and that certainly is measurable. And I know that's a very big challenge with a lot of our clients. We've had a lot of previous episodes. There was one that's going to come out in a few weeks. We were just talking about that challenge. How a lot of companies you walk into, you're like, oh, we don't have a database. We don't have data to be able to go. So you got to have. That's kind of like step one. If you get the systems, and then build that database, and then we can start going from there. We can't jump from point A to point F like that, as much as you'd like to, but
yeah, that's part of the journey we're on as well. Just getting Salesforce in the middle of this past year. Still working on figuring out how to do some of the marketing automation that can come from that. But yeah, it's a journey, and this is one step, and we hope that this will be the first year of several to come. And each year we would build on that database, and again, build on the image that it creates. So going out and spending money to educate and to tool up distribution and end users, because this training would be open for distributors to take and to get paid for, but just not necessarily promoted directly to them. That's something that, again, nobody else, no other company that's not one of the big basic 4 or 5 manufacturers,
right,
the billion-dollar companies, nobody besides them are even thinking about doing anything, especially because it doesn't tie back to sales, because they have a hard time understanding that you have to spend money like this to train and to educate and get your word out. And it's something we can kind of live on and hopefully continue to be a success for many years. It's one step in the journey to getting our digital marketing all kind of to talk and work together.
Absolutely. You meant the key word here. It's a journey, right? So again, it's not a one and done kind of thing, and it's sort of this this iterative process. And I'm sure there's a lot of learnings and things you'll take and look at it, and then say, hey, oh, this went well or this didn't. Let's read. And that's the beauty of being able to do that in a digital format. Like you mentioned before, with maybe print ads. Okay, it's really hard to be able to track, kind of what are you getting out of that unless it's set up like really, really well. And even if it is set up really, really well, there is going to be a digital component to that. You're going to be going to a landing page, or there's some sort of domain, or so you can measure some sort of traffic or something there, right? So, that's
Danny, you bring up a good point, and part of it was around landing pages, and part of it is really around the challenges of going to market through distribution. So one of the first challenges we had in January, really, and I think it's been there for a long time. I could tell by the state of our website, something we've been working on now for almost a year, and it's still a work in progress, because what we have the challenge of is one website, controlsolutionsinc.com, that is really trying to tailor itself to meet the needs of two different distinct parties: our customers, who are distribution, and end users, who are the people that are using those products. And those end users are really three different groups too. You've got at least three, right? You've got the pest control technicians, you've got the golf course superintendents and managers, and then on the animal health side, you've got a lot of ranch store managers and even homeowners like you and me, who have bought a product at a tractor supply store and don't know how to use it or want to make sure you're using it correctly. So how do you have one site that tailors to all those different needs and all those different type of people? Well, you really can't. There's ways that you can work around it, but it is our biggest competitors. They have their own consumer site and they have a distribution site. There's some overlap in there, but in reality, that's the cleanest way to do it. And so, making sure that you understand who your target audience is with that website in B2B and working through distribution is really tough, because you need to have resources available and easily accessible for both types of audiences.
Absolutely. So, but you propose and you bring in a really good solution to be able to afford that, and that is education, training, solve that challenge. And I think that's great. That you gotta, again, goes back to that other the thing called budget. Sometimes it's a challenge. You have to make do with what you have and make sure that because. Okay, maybe we don't have a gigantic budget like some of these bigger guys do. So let's you make do with what you've got, but making sure that what you are doing, you're able to measure, and then you're able to grow on that and to be able to in some form or fashion. So fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you mentioned budget a couple times, and some of us are in. Yeah, we all have different situations, but all of us could always use more funds. I think. What we're trying to do is work with the money we have, but then it's really, we're constrained as much by human capital as we are by green. So by dollars and cents, and that's where really you have to focus in on as much as you can on the tactics that you can measure and that you can compare to each other. And so we have we're still working with, for example, our trade publications, but we're pushing them to not give us the whole menu of everything that we can do, but instead looking across a couple different publications, saying what are some digital tactics that are similar across both of you, and that we can kind of compare to each other and work together to kind of just change the balance from traditional to digital media.
Yeah.
And trying to do so in a way that doesn't spread us too thin, but keeps us focused as much as possible.
Absolutely. Key thing. Interesting. Back to the budget, but you kind of touched on an idea, and it was really well. There's a great quote, right? There's a Hollywood movie composer, Hans Zimmer, right? He did Inception and Batman, all that stuff. Great guy. I'm a dork. I love all that stuff. And we went to he had a concert here in Atlanta. We went to that. It was awesome. He has a masterclass on I see these things on Facebook and YouTube. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but there's always masterclasses for like acting and arts and stuff. And in his, teaser video, he says, ideas are not restrained by budget, which I thought was really interesting. You think, okay, obviously totally different industry, right? But you got to think about this guy is producing something, right? And the same thing, it's like, we got all this stuff. He said, look, those ideas, we can think about the moon. It's where I take it, what we were talking about here is that really that innovation. And so how can we do things differently? Okay, I know we've got this box over here, this box called budget, but you know what? It doesn't always have to be this and this and this and what are other things that other ways of doing that? And that's where that innovation and that ideation comes out from. To let's try things, let's do things differently. So that's why I love the training piece.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely right. We are going to have to constrain ourselves and not do some things because we want to try something different. But one of the most, I guess, surprising quotes that I got from my executive vice president when we were talking about this training program, he's not sold on it completely, right? It's not going to tie directly to sales, and his sales guys will have to spend some time probably tracking down some of these people and helping out and so on and so forth. But he did say, if we need to take a risk, and if we don't do anything different, by definition, we're going to keep doing the same thing over and over again. And while it's not hurting the company, it's definitely not helping. And right, so it's about taking those next steps and thinking, like you said, outside the box a little bit, or doing some things that are different, that are risky. I mean, there's a chance this tactic or any digital thing we do and any trade thing we do, it could fail. But this way, if it fails on a digital marketing tactic, at least that it failed.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, yes.
Right. Whereas with a lot of more traditional media, you don't really know whether it worked or whether you don't. That old adage of, I know I'm wasting half of my marketing budget, I just don't know which half. Yeah. Well, do it right, which half.
Yeah, exactly.
You still might kill that half that you're not using efficiently, but at least you'll know what is working and you can reallocate.
Exactly. No, great. No, these are all great things, Ty. I mean, I really appreciate the conversation, the time we've had here. I think we've brought a lot of great value and some ideas here. If any viewers have any questions for you, is there any way they can reach out to you? You have a Twitter handle
Yeah, absolutely. So feel free to reach out to me on Facebook at Tyson Ferraro, at Twitter at Tyson Ferraro, and LinkedIn. You can find me as well. So happy to answer any questions or start any dialogues and build any relationships. Awesome,
Ty. Again, thanks so much. It was awesome having you.
Yeah, thanks, Danny. Appreciate it. Good luck.
Thanks. So, all right, there we go. Great recap. Another great episode here on Industrial Sage. We were talking about really what are some value-added resources and some different strategies and tactics to be able to think about if you are a 100% in a distribution model there, because it's very challenging and difficult to be able to track some of that ROI and to be able to, it's difficult to be able to go back and tie things into your CRM and be able to say, hey, we did this and this, we sold X amount of products over here. So really, take some of those ideas, try to think outside the box, come out with those different solutions that are really going to help to solve the challenges of not just your end user there, but also your distributor. They've got challenges too. So what can we do to be able to help make their lives easier, to be able to help make their jobs easier so they can, sell your product? That's the name of the game. So again, as always, thanks so much for watching this episode of Industrial Sage. If you liked it, please like it, share it. We'd love a review if you're listening to it on iTunes. If you have any questions, we would love to answer your questions. You can submit it at industrialsage.com/questions. If you do that, we'll send you a t-shirt. And from the beautiful Optimum Production Studios here in Atlanta, Georgia, I'm Danny Gonzalez. Thanks for watching, and this is Industrial Sage.